Chapter 3. The Forest of Echoing Hands. The forest without the road was a different world. It didn't guide Leo, it tested him. The ground rose and fell unpredictably. Roots curled like sleeping snakes. Every few steps, he had to push aside heavy branches dusted with frost, and each time the needles brushed his cheeks, he felt more alone. At first, Leo tried to walk in a straight line. That seemed sensible, but the trees were too dense. The woods bent around him, nudging him sideways. He began to realize that the forest wasn't a place you conquered with direction. It was a place you moved through with patience. Then he noticed the hands. It began with one tree, an old pine whose bark bulged into the shape of a palm, fingers raised as if waving. Leo stared at it, thinking his tired eyes were playing tricks. But then he saw another, fingers curling inward like a beckoning gesture, and another, two hands pressed together as if praying. Soon, he was surrounded. Everywhere he looked, bark shaped itself into hands, pleading hands, warning hands, pointing hands, grasping hands. Some reached toward the sky, others clawed at the ground. Some seemed to clutch invisible things, frozen mid-motion. The silence here was deeper, as if the forest held its breath to listen. Leo's own breathing sounded too loud. He tried to walk faster, but the hands seemed to multiply. In the corners of his vision, he imagined them moving, flexing, turning, pointing at him. His scalp prickled. Then guilt found him, as if it had been waiting for the right setting. A memory surged up sharp and bright, the argument with Maya a week ago. He had wanted to follow her to the village. She had said no, told him to stay and practice his runes. He had felt small, powerless, treated like a child. And he had lashed out. "You're not my mother," he had shouted. "You're boring and scared." He remembered the look on her face, hurt, not angry. He remembered the way she had turned away without slamming the door, as if even that would be too harsh. He remembered the shame that followed him like a shadow. Leo stopped walking. The air felt colder. "I didn't mean it," he whispered, though no one was there. The forest answered. From the moss at his feet, something began to rise. It wasn't sudden. It gathered slowly, as if the ground itself were knitting his regret into form. Twisted roots lifted, wrapped in wet moss. Branches bent into a hunched figure that resembled Maya's shape, taller than Leo, but faceless. Where a face should have been, there was only smooth bark, blank and listening. Leo's heart thudded. He took a step back. The figure took a step forward. It wasn't fast. It didn't attack. But every time Leo remembered the argument, every time he replayed his own words, the figure seemed to grow larger. Its root arms thickened. Its shoulders broadened. The moss clinging to it deepened into a cloak. "I'm sorry," Leo blurted. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm..." The figure swelled, as if drinking his apology like water. Leo froze. He realized with a sick clarity that the creature wasn't feeding on his cruelty. It was feeding on his looping regret, his endless need to undo the moment, to rewrite it with different words. He looked around. The bark hands on the trees seemed to lean toward him, fingers extended in accusation. He could almost hear them, not as voices but as thoughts. "You heard her. You don't deserve to find her." Leo's throat tightened. Tears burned behind his eyes. Then another memory slipped in, quieter but true. Later that night, after the argument, Maya had brought him honey cakes, his favorite, without mentioning the fight. She had set the plate down, ruffled his hair, and sat with him by the fire as if the world was still safe. She had forgiven him before he had even asked. The guilt he carried wasn't hers. It was his. Leo lowered his hands. He stopped speaking. The apology he had been repeating was no longer for Maya. It was for himself, to ease his own pain. He had been trying to use sorrow as payment. He faced the creature and took a slow breath. His chest trembled. His voice came out small but steady. "It happened," he said. "I regret it." He didn't beg. He didn't bargain. He didn't try to erase what was done. He simply named it and held it in the open. The creature paused. The forest seemed to pause with it. Leo swallowed hard. "And I will do better," he added, not as a promise to the creature, but as a direction for himself. The root figure shuddered. The moss loosened. The bark arms cracked softly, like old wood drying. The creature began to crumble, not violently, but gently, returning to the earth as if it had never been separate from it. Roots untwined. Leaves drifted down. The blank face dissolved into dust. When it was gone, the trees were still trees. The hand shapes in the bark did not vanish, but they no longer felt accusing. They felt like witnesses, somber, silent, accepting. Leo wiped his eyes with his sleeve. The cold air stung his cheeks, but it also cleared his mind. He realized something important. Guilt could be useful if it taught him. But if he carried it forever, it would become a monster. He touched the star on his scarf. The silver thread caught faint light, steady and calm. "I'm coming," he whispered, not as an apology, but as a choice. And he walked forward, leaving the forest of hands behind him.